didn't even get to cross.
Yes, guys, that small forward that I told you guys about is Paul George. I think this guy, honestly, I believe this guy could dethrone LeBron as the best small forward in the league, definitely. He has the tools. He's shown that he can do it before. He just didn't have the manpower at the time. He's only 23. Paul George is such an amazing two-way player, and he's going to go into some things. I believe that his offense and his defense are both his greatest assets, along with his just handle on the game. He's always cool, calm, and collected. He never forces turnovers. He's always hitting just smooth jumpers that a lot of players in this league can't hit, and they're very talented players in the league. So I'm going to go into why I believe that Paul George is honestly the heir to LeBron's throne. All right, so prior to the super team, this is kind of in the super team era, but prior to the super teams that we know of, the Warriors and the Cavaliers, where we pretty much predict the same finals every year. The playoffs were actually an exciting time for basketball because we had, Eastern Conference Finals, semifinals, Western Conference semis, and all of that kind of stuff. So in the 2013 Eastern Conference Finals, we had the Indiana Pacers versus the Miami Heat, and everyone kind of wrote off the Pacers to be this team that they weren't gonna last too long in the series. It was gonna be a very quick, sweep series. And it ended up not being the case because they went actually all 7 games versus the Heat, and they really forced the Heat to push themselves to be great. In this series, there was a young man by the name of Paul George who rose up. During the year, he was doing stuff throughout the year that caught everyone's eye. But, this series, he really came out and showed that he could be a potential star in the league. He averaged 19.4. I'm going to show the stats. He averaged 19.4 points per game, along with 5.1 assists on 47.5 field goal percentage and 55.1 effective field goal. And you can see the rest of the stats. And that's all at age 22. I showed LeBron James' stats right next to him. LeBron, this is his prime. This is like LeBron James and the next year. His last 2 years in Miami were really his prime in the NBA. So, if you're comparing the numbers between any player and prime LeBron's a stat sheet stuffer. So you got to kind of take it in context when you're looking at these numbers. This is a young 22-year-old up-and-coming star versus, star in his superstar, legend in his prime. So, Paul George, I really don't dick ride anything, but Paul George is a nasty motherfucker when it comes to isolation ball. And he really started to show so next year. This year they got bounced, or 2013, they got bounced out of the playoffs that round in the 7th game. And Indiana, they were crushed, but they came back next year. They were battling just as hard, actually even harder, even though it only went to 6 games. In the 2014 Eastern Conference Finals, Paul George, this man actually averaged more than LeBron James in terms of points per game. And as you can see here, he pretty much goes toe-to-toe with LeBron in every category except free throw percentage, which later on he absolutely destroys LeBron. So I'll go into that later. Paul George, the reason I say that he can dethrone LeBron is because unlike many of the players in the league who are afraid to go at LeBron or actually attack him, he goes at him on offense. He goes at him on defense. He sticks with him. He doesn't allow certain things to happen. He's a two-way. He's the definition of a two-way player. Him, Kawhi, Jimmy Butler. This is why I picked him. Well, the reason I picked him over Jimmy Butler and those guys is because he can go back at LeBron on offense. Kawhi and those guys, they can usually stop LeBron on defense. So they can hang with him. But in terms of firing back on him on offense, I don't think any other small forward in the league does it like Paul George does. You can see here he averaged more points per game. His three-point shooting was better, and you have to remember that he was still only 23 at the time. His effective field goal percentage was still very high at 54.3. His assist numbers are similar, not as high as LeBron's, but we also have to remember what team he was playing on. In the 2016-2017 regular season, I'm skipping this far because Paul George did have the leg injury, so it would not be just or fair to compare LeBron James, such a great player, to an injured player. That's just not realistic. When you look at the 2016-2017 regular season, LeBron James, he averages more points per game and quite a few more assists. He pretty much has him beat in all the stats except for the major shooting stats like free throw percentage and three-point field goal percentage. Paul George almost shoots 40% from the three-point line. That's pretty disgusting considering that he plays an inside-out game. He can go back and forth. Along with the fact that his free throw percentage is almost 90%. It's at 89.8. And LeBron, despite what people may think, he's not always been known to be the best free throw shooter. I mean, the dude, yeah, people like say LeBron and all that shit. I don't really find that stuff funny, but I mean, there was a reason for it. He did shoot very poorly from the free throw line quite a few times in his career over extended periods, and it did show in the playoffs as well. So in last year's playoffs, I'm sure everybody, well, not everybody, a lot of people didn't actually watch the first round or don't watch the first round because they don't think it's interesting. But we actually got a very good battle on TV between Paul George and LeBron James. Paul George was really going at him again. I mean, in the 2014 playoffs, he was going at him. I mean, he was hitting really hard shots, three-pointers like 3 feet behind the line with someone on you off the dribble. Those are extremely hard to do in the NBA considering how far the three-point line is from the hoop. And Paul George was doing that consistently. I mean, he was going at LeBron. If you can see here, Paul George actually, his assist numbers went way up from what they usually are. He averaged a lot more points per game. He started to look like the old Paul George, actually even better. He was averaging 28 points per game, which was more than LeBron's. He averaged 7.3 assists, which was less than LeBron's. The field goal percentage is really where he lost out. But you also have to remember what kind of team he was playing on. He was not playing on the same old Indiana team that he used to play on, where there was a little bit more depth and spreading of the floor. In this offense, he's the primary go-to, and all the attention that Cleveland could focus on defense would be focused on him. Versus LeBron James, who has a Kyrie Irving, a Kevin Love, a J.R. Smith. These are all guys that he chooses specifically to spread the floor. This is how LeBron James plays, so that he can get to the hoop. And you know what? It's a good thing for him because that's how he chooses to run the team. That's a great option. But other players don't have that luxury. And as you can see here in the stats, that he's by himself and the team isn't involved. The free throw percentage is leaps and bounds above what LeBron's is. LeBron's free throw percentage in this playoff series was 57.9%. Paul George's was 86.7%. Also rebounds. I mean, Paul George's rebounds were 8.8 versus LeBron's 9.8. And Paul George, he was sticking in there, and 3-point percentage wise, he shot 42.9%, and I'm actually more impressed with that because LeBron James, like I said before, I mean, he has lots of players that can space the floor and draw a lot of attention away on offense. Even though he is the main offensive focal point, he does have other players to draw some attention away from him, and that really gives you a break on offense in terms of just getting an extra second to spot up and shoot versus Paul George, who's pretty much being guarded man-to-man the entirety of the game. So now take a step, just a step back from stats. Speaking of step back, Paul George, I just wanted to dive into his offensive tool set and why I believe that he's better than other candidates such as Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, as the person who's actually able to knock off LeBron. The reason I say Paul George can do that is because all these other players that I listed, they're lacking in one category or the other, meaning that they're lacking in either offense or defensive intensity. For Kevin Durant, he's missing completely. He's just so missing on defense. When defense comes up, Durant goes missing. He's not the Durantula anymore. He's some soft guy. I mean, there's a guy I used to play ball with in high school. I'm not going to name his name. 6'10", skinny guy. I mean, the dude is just trash, absolutely trash. He didn't like playing defense. He didn't like playing offense. He's just so lazy. And that's who Durant reminds me of. Like, it's this big baby that we used to have at the school, man. If the dude reminds me of a high school basketball player when I see him on TV, then it means he's not looking like what he should be because he's not just a pro. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, Kevin Durant, and that's ridiculous. So I'm sorry. I'd rather take Paul George because the little knock that you have on offense, Paul George's offense is like a 90 versus Kevin Durant's like 95, 96. Paul George's defense is going to be like an 85, 86 versus Kevin Durant's defense, which is going to be like a 78. In that region. So they average out to be a little higher than what Kevin Durant's defensive ability actually is. He has so much talent. This is why I say that he could easily be a great defensive player and stop a lot of things, but he lets a lot of things go by him. Lets a lot of he doesn't do a lot of help defense. Lets a lot of guys lay the ball up when he could easily spike it or just block it and catch it. Moving on to Jimmy Butler, I believe that Jimmy Butler, he can do it on defense. He just doesn't have the offensive tool set to really go at someone like LeBron James for 4 quarters over a 7-game series. It's just that simple. I don't think anyone here actually takes Jimmy Butler to be an offensive superstar. He's a two-way player. He can score on offense, but in terms of let's say LeBron's having a 40-point night and you just can't stop him on defense, I mean, you're going to have to fire back. Sooner or later, you're going to have to put up some points as well. So, I mean, I didn't even want to put Gordon Hayward into this picture. I just think that's silly. I'm going to actually do an analysis later on, down a couple months from now, probably a month from now, before the season starts, on why Gordon Hayward is overrated. But going back to the top small forwards in the league, Kawhi Leonard, I love Kawhi Leonard. He's a great two-way player. He's the definition of a two-way player as well. But Kawhi Leonard is a little more defensive-minded than offensive-minded. Well, not a little more, a lot more. He has a great offensive moveset, in the sense that, yes, he can score about 20 points or so when needed to be, but there's some nights when you play a player like LeBron James where you're going to have to drop 40. You're going to have to go into the 40s, in the deep 30s, and you just got to have those high explosive point per game, not point per game, but point performances. Sometimes Paul George has gone off for like 37 on LeBron. Sometimes gone off for like 35, 40. I mean, Paul George can get up there while LeBron's guarding him because he has that offensive tool set. I mean, he can put you in the post. He can come out of the post, do a dribble drive game like DeMar DeRozan, hit the mid-range jumpers. He can stretch the floor as well. Along with, he has a very good drive game, good passer. Because he's such a good finisher, you have to play him honest, inside and out. I mean, he's very, and I say this because on defense, he's close enough to players like Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler to that now we can look at just his offense, because he's close to them on defense and he's better than them on offense. So, I mean, personally, well, not just personally, I think if you actually watch them all play and watch how they match up versus LeBron, Paul George actually matches up with him the best. He has enough length to lock him down, and there's a reason that Kevin Durant respects Paul George when he said that OKC's looking scary. I mean, Paul George is a very, very dangerous player, and I think a lot of people in the league need to stop sleeping on him. He is probably the best small forward behind LeBron James in the league. And I only say that because LeBron James is a special talent that comes along once in a generation. But I believe, honestly, if Paul George has a decent core around him, he could easily be the top small forward in the league for quite a few years to come. I just don't want him to get that Tracy McGrady treatment where he carries a team and his body just gives out. So I'm glad that he went over to OKC, play along with another star, not handle the ball as much, and just keep his body in shape. Alright guys, I'm going to keep doing these videos, but I'm going to go ahead and get out of here because I've been rambling long enough. Yeah, make sure you guys catch my power forward video, the sleeper power forward video that I'm going to put out soon. Also, I'm going to be doing a video, because I got inspired when I said earlier, video on the top 5 overrated players. So definitely, that should be interesting. All right, I'll catch you guys later.